This is San Francisco.
Welcome back to San Francisco, where if you've seen downtown recently, you've seen Market Street in pieces with Civic Center gated off, fenced off, and all the cops beginning a choreographed crackdown of heavy sweeps against anybody who's using public space. This is the sort of crackdown we've seen from past events like the Super Bowl and America's Cup. This time it's for another elite event, APEC, the invite-only Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Conference, whose planners are getting down on bended knee for some of the world's most fascist leaders. I'm going to talk to Malaya and Mara from Anakbayan CCSF, which is part of the No to APEC coalition. The No to APEC coalition describes APEC as an exclusive and elitist country club of the rich, representing the interests of big business. They will be here to promote free trade in ways that will definitely exploit workers and put corporations before people. I'll run down a few of the assholes who will be in attendance for APEC. In addition to Joe Biden, you'll have Bongbong Marcos of the authoritarian Marcos family of the Philippines, CEOs of Johnson & Johnson, ExxonMobil, and the International Chamber of Commerce, as well as some old favorites like Condoleezza Rice, who got a promotion after serving George W. Bush and now works at the Stanford think tank named after Herbert Hoover, and the wine entrepreneur and ex-husband of Kimberly Guilfoyle, Gavin Newsom. SF's Mayor London Breed got a special pardon from the Board of Supervisors here, who had a special vote to allow her to fundraise on the clock so she won't miss photo ops with the world leaders, and said recently, quote, APEC is gonna again put us on the world stage. And she wants the rest of us not to worry because she says APEC's gonna bring in millions for businesses in SF. But as you can imagine, world dictators are not gonna be stopping in to support your local coffee shop. So if anything, the Ritz-Carlton and other global hotel chains that have outposts here in SF will be getting the biggest bump to profits. And again, none of these events are open to us lowly San Franciscans. But the mayor has raised $20 million for this party for fans of authoritarianism with help from the person she calls SF's official party planner, Mariam Muratolu, who is the head of SF's Office of Protocol, which is a department that is, quote, the primary liaison between the mayor and representatives of foreign governments. So the mayor and Mariam have been sucking up to corporations like Kaiser Permanente and the company behind the cryptocurrency scam Ripple. These companies gave a few $1,000,000 for the APEC party. In return, we'll get access to world leaders and some really sad press releases that will eternally be part of the mayor's proclamations at City Hall. Press releases signed by London Breed, desperately proclaiming these companies to be the city's most cherished partners. The top donor was Grattan Resort and Casino, which runs the most daily casino buses out of SF. They gave close to $5 million for APEC as the casino tries to stop another casino from being built in Sonoma County on another reservation. Malaya and Mara are part of Anakbayan at City College, and they're helping to organize some of the counter actions to APEC that will be going on. And our conversation is right after the break.
My name is Malaya.
And my name is Mara.
Yeah, we're part of a local organization called Anakbayan City College in San Francisco. We're a local chapter of a national organization, but we're based at City College of San Francisco. We are a working class youth-led organization that fights for true liberation in the Philippines from U.S. imperialism, military occupation, and really for our land and our country to be run for the people, by the people. Currently at CCSF, our Chancellor Martin has been acting on behalf of the state to downsize our campus, and we've really seen it affect our education by a lot of cutting of our classes. We see departments being run by like one faculty, and on top of that, our teachers have been fighting for increase of wages for years now, and they just increasingly get turned down and get turned away by our chancellor. Just to highlight also some local issues we've been taking up alongside of APEC. But Mara, tell them a little bit about APEC.
So, APEC stands for the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, and it's a forum where 21 countries in the Asia Pacific region, along with Mexico, the US, Russia, and China, they meet annually every year to collaborate and discuss like strategies, make trade agreements that favor and serve the interests of governments and boost profits for big corporations. It has a fun little acronym, and often you'll see advertisement around the Bay, especially in San Francisco. I've been seeing them on the Muni, where they'll be like, APEC is epic. It is not very epic. The reason for that is that a lot of the free trade agreements that they talk about often is about the relaxation of policies. So a lot of the policies that are in place that protect workers, that make sure workers get their fair wages, they want to loosen a lot of those policies. And obviously it affects a lot of our jobs, the food we eat, the clothes we wear, the energy industry, our medical access technology. So they talk a lot about these policies, and it comes often at the expense of us, working class people, right?
Yeah, I think like one of the, because APEC was started in the 80s, but one thing they're really trying to push for in 2023 is like, oh, getting women in the workforce as an untapped resource. But we know that these women and these young girls are going to be sent into like highly exploitative jobs. We've been seeing a lot of AI coming up, but what we don't see is a lot of the sweatshops in the Philippines and in different countries that are really backing this AI, where workers are forced to work with really not a lot of protection for their labor. One of the things that they're really pushing this year is technology for sustainability, especially in the Philippines. We've seen that this technology, one example I could think of is the New Scale power corporation that is trying to build nuclear power plants in the Philippines, although they create tons of radioactive waste. And if we see that waste fall into our islands, we could see whole islands being destroyed. So when we talk about technology, who's it really for? This technology is not being used for the people, but it's really being used to create more profit for these big corporations and really to increase surveillance on our organizers and on our civilians. Because as the economic crisis, like in America, all over the world, gets worse, we see that people are really turning to organizing as our only way and as our only solution to this crisis. We're going to see a lot of more surveillance come out of these APEC conferences. One thing that we really want to warn the SF community about is APEC is being hosted in the Moscone Center in the Soma, the South of Market, with our highest population of houseless community. They already started sweeping them and displacing them off the streets. As APEC gets closer, we're really going to see a lot of violence on our houseless community. On top of that, they want to say like APEC's going to be epic. It's going to be like fun for the people, but they're actually putting up exclusion zones.
We're not even invited.
It's going to be, I'm doing air quotes, I know you can't see me, protecting the Moscone Center, Yerba Buena, and a radius around that. That's going to be guarded by the police, military. They're also sending the National Guard down here. What's that going to do for our civilians? What's that going to do for our people, you know? So we really want to warn people, because all of the bus routes are going to be redirected, and it's going to be hosted November 11th to the 18th. When we're talking to our elders that live in the Soma, they are planning to cancel all of their doctor's appointments and stock up on food so that they can stay in their houses for that whole week. If you live or work in that area, you're going to have to go through security checkpoints where they're going to check your bags, they're going to check your person, and you're going to have to show your identification. What's that going to mean for our undocumented community in the city? You know, the city is supposed to be a sanctuary city, but we see that APEC is going to increase a lot of militarization in the Soma, where we have a lot of working class and we have a lot of our houseless community. One thing Mayor London Bede says is that APEC is going to fix the doom loop in downtown. Yet, our local businesses actually recently put out a letter saying because of the limited foot traffic, they might not even survive the APEC conference. They might not even be able to make it out of this conference.
Yeah, and this is following the recent
Mhm.
lockdown. Like, we haven't really gotten out of lockdown. It wasn't too long ago. So these small businesses are truly suffering, and they need the traffic to come to, to survive.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have anything else to add, Mara, before I talk about like who's going to be coming in November?
Yeah. So the reason the summit is being hosted in San Francisco specifically is because San Francisco has a huge Asian population, right? East Asian, Southeast Asian. And those are the countries that, the Biden administration is really targeting, in the sense that there's an initiative that the Biden administration is trying to propose called IPEC. And IPEF stands for the Indo-Pacific Economic
Framework.
Forum. Framework. Thank you. Economic framework. And it's currently being negotiated by the US, which will impact the economic rules of 14 countries. So accounting for 40% of the global GDP, impacting jobs, wages, labor rights, consumer privacy, environmental policy, digital trade. These negotiations have been kept from the public intentionally with extreme secrecy, which is really shady. Like, why are we hiding that,
Yeah, no, I fully agree with all these points you're making. I mean, when you're talking about like the AI being like a smokescreen to like disappear the fact that workers are still working behind the AI, it's just that disappearing them means that we can pay them less.
Mm-hmm.
Another point that you made that just have to emphasize is like every time one of these big events that the city is putting a lot of resources, local people's resources into, you do see like the sweeps, you see ID checks, surveillance, more and more. And it seems like APEC is going to be a test of like how much surveillance can one city take. Who are the people that are going to be showing up at the conference that people here in the US might not be that aware of, but who we should be keeping an eye on?
Take it away, Malaya.
Yeah, someone that we really want to highlight coming here in November is the current president of the Philippines, Marcos Jr. People refer to him as like Bongbong Marcos. That name might sound familiar because actually his father was the president of the Philippines in the 70s. He was known as like one of the worst dictators in Asia, and he was president for 21 years. And he did this by enacting martial law onto the Philippines, complete military rule. And during this, we saw thousands of killings of activists and civilians. We saw hundreds of illegal arrests of activists and citizens and people who oppose him politically. And we also saw him steal billions of pesos from the Filipino people. And it's actually those pesos that Marcos Jr., his son, the current president, used to steal this current election. Marcos Jr. is the current president right now. He's been the president for about 1 year. And during this year, we've seen just an increase, just like his father, an increase of killings of activists, illegal disappearance of especially student activists that we've been highlighting a lot, and especially peasant and indigenous activists, because those are really our frontline defenders, the ones who are currently defending our land, our rich land filled with resources. And the reason why Marcos Jr. is doing this, is enacting this state violence on to the people in the Philippines, is to squash the National Democratic Revolution in the Philippines. It's that very revolution that actually ousted his father from presidency. We see that all of the policies that Marcos Jr. is implementing is to increase militarization to squash the people's movement. And it's actually through that movement that Anakbayan was founded. And we see that especially Marcos Jr. is really increasing a lot of foreign investments into the Philippines. And that's why, Marcos Jr. really loves APEC. That's why he's coming here in November for APEC, to sell out the Filipino people and the Filipino land to these big corporations and to the US. He wants to really solidify the Philippines as the US's puppet. I mean, it's been solidified like for decades now, but really just want to like push it more. And that's someone we really want to highlight coming in to the city.
It is so intense that we are rolling out the red carpet basically for someone like Marcos.
Yeah. Like I said, Marcos is really coming here to like really give the Philippines to the US, and the person who is signing off on this is Biden. Tell them more about Biden, Mara.
Yeah, Biden sucks in a lot of ways, but he's very hypocritical in the sense that I find it ironic how Biden promotes democracy and the protection of democracy, and like being like America's role in this world is to protect democracy, but then inviting and shaking hands with a lot of leaders who are known of a lot of like human rights atrocities, and also like especially with the example of Bongbong Marcos, of his constant targeting of activists and communities. So it's like, are you really for democracy? But also on the same note, I think a lot of people are angry at the aid that the Biden administration has given to Israel, and especially with the genocide that's happening to Palestinians. And then on top of that, coming back here and throwing more money, unnecessary amount of money, on an exclusive elite dinner to talk about more money. So it's like, to put it simply, it really is that. It's very ridiculous because apparently we don't have enough money to forgive student debt, and we don't have enough money to fund a lot of these programs that help people, to house people, to feed people. But we do have a lot of money to throw on wars and dinners to, wine and dine rich people, but not enough money for us, right?
And as you mentioned, it's both on the national level that the US is supporting APEC, and then also on the local level, we are the ones, like, in many ways paying for that red carpet that's going to be rolled out for Bongbong Marcos and Biden to, shake hands for photo ops. On the local level, our politicians here will also be at these very expensive dinners that you mentioned. You mentioned the doom loop, and like that APEC is being sold to us as people living in the Bay as this way to like solve the doom loop that is facing downtown. And yet we have small business owners telling us that no, in fact, there is all of this, construction going on Market Street right now. There's like a bunch of bus lines, and the trolley lines are currently not in service, or they're being redirected in a way that is actually hurting small businesses more than it is helping. Wondering if you would mind elaborating on why locally are politicians and companies throwing all this money at this celebration for the super rich?
I mean, if you look at it in Mayor London Breed's recent budget proposal and how she cut a lot of funding from programs that provide services such as childcare, housing, food, mental health, she cut a lot of those programs and decided to add more money to the DA's office, to the police budget that's already way overinflated. And that's, to me, a strategic move in order to host APEC, right? Because in the end of the day, Mayor London Breed is only looking out for herself, right? So, in order to win another election, in order to run another campaign, she needs these corporations to back her up. I wanted to point this out earlier, but one of the biggest irony of APEC, and I think Malaya touched on it too, is how it promotes sustainability and that it's good for the environment. But one of its biggest sponsors are Chevron, Exxon, Boeing, and all of these big oil companies. And it makes me really raise my eyebrows on like, how is that sustainable if it's backed by all of these big oil corporations?
Yeah, no, it's just like a public relations sort of smokescreen that they're trying to play. And it's pretty like as soon as you do look at like, oh, okay, where is the money coming from and who are they inviting to the event while people locally have to like, make sure that they have their IDs on them at all times. Like you mentioned, a little tougher for people who are undocumented. It's not serving people locally.
Yeah, touching on what Mara already talked about is the recent budget fight. During the most recent budget proposal from London Breed, she proposed to cut millions to SRO housing. She proposed to cut millions to early child care development, as she proposed to put millions of dollars into the police budget, into the DA's office. With how much money actually did go through with that, it increased the police and sheriff's office to over $1 billion. And a reason why Anakbayan CCSF really took that up is because, our college barely gets funding. We have personally, my teachers have 3 jobs. None of my teachers can afford to live in the city. It's simply too expensive. Our city is not prioritizing the people who actually uplift and run the city day to day. And those are our teachers. Those are our bus drivers. That's my mother. Like, the actual people who run this city are not getting paid adequately for it and are getting pushed out the city for it. Like me, I'm the only person in my family who live in the city anymore. My family grew up in the city, but now all of them got pushed out all over the Bay. We're the only ones who's able to afford to live here. This budget proposal also came at a time where we saw the murder of Binko Brown, who was a Black trans man who was also houseless and went to City College. He was killed by literally a Walgreens armed security guard. And what did the DA do about that? The DA completely dropped the charges. So at that time, we saw the DA's charges were getting dropped, and we saw just millions of more dollars going into the police when, our city can't even afford to run. Our teachers have been asking for fair wages for years. So we are really, really mad to see where our taxpayer money is going. Because at the end of the day, it's our taxpayer money. It's the money that we're working hard to produce. And that's how we were really able to get into the NOTA APEC fight. It was during the budget fights. Anakbayan went around to different supervisors' office, and we were actually able to lobby to them and tell them, how is it going to affect the houseless community? How is it going to affect students? How is it going to affect workers? And personally, for me, I grew up in the Soma. That's where I was raised. So it's really, really hard to see really the increase of militarization that's going to be coming in these upcoming weeks. And that's why we felt very agitated to take it up, because we're a youth organization. This is literally our future that they're playing with. This is the future of our lives that they're playing with. It's always been my dream to go back to the Philippines. And, I'm thinking about how is that going to look like with all of these foreign corporations that are plummeting our land. A lot of City College students, we're all working class. A lot of us are migrants also. And we're really connected back to the homeland of where we came from. And we see that our issues and our conditions are not separate from the countries that we came from. But the reason why we were really forced to come here is due to US imperialism, is because our countries are not given resources or opportunities that we're forced to migrate over here. One of the most sickening things we saw is the mayor actually bid $30 million to host APEC in the city. On top of that, Mayor London Breed reserved $10 million of our public funds to host APEC. And that's when we were up in City Hall for damn near 10 hours waiting to give public comment to demand our money not to go to the police, to demand our money to go back into the community. But what does London Breed do? She reserves $10 million of our public funds, of our taxpayer money, to host APEC. Do you have anything else to add, Mara?
Mayor Breed, when she wanted to propose soliciting funds for APEC, she actually waived this policy that was put in by voters, where it said that public officials were not allowed to fund for private events.
Right.
Solicit funds from private corporations. And the reason it was put in by voters is so, to prevent corruption from happening. So she waived it. And it ran by the board of supervisors. They were like, yeah, cool. We'll let you do it. And then that's when she started fundraising for APEC.
Basically on company time, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
She's using her time as mayor when ostensibly she's supposed to be running the city out at these events, galas, in order to raise, what is it, $30 million from large corporations to host the event.
Yeah. So it's pretty it just shows her actions really reflect her intentions, and they also contradict her words. And that's why I wanted to point that out, is because if it was for the good of the community, then why are you actively waiving a policy that was put in place for the protection of the community? Yeah. And then selling this out like it's good for us when it isn't, claiming that it will bring all of this money into the city. We're going to be so rich, but we're not even invited. We're not invited. People like us, students, youth, not even just students and youth, elders of the community, are not given a seat at the table to hear what the deals are. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why they don't want us to know about what's going on there. And there's a reason why we're not invited. But we are paying for it. That's the funny part about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is going to be an elite event for elite people from around the world. I feel like all of that was beautifully said, connecting the struggles that are happening at City College, to the Philippines, to DC. And I was wondering if you all could talk about some of the anti-APEC actions being planned.
Yeah. So currently we're mass campaigning to community members and people and NSF, trying to, bring awareness to APEC, what it means, how, also not just in the sense that we're trying to mobilize people. We also just want people to know in order to keep themselves safe, right? Because, again, there's going to be a lot of policing that's going to happen. So we want to make sure our youth, our community members, our houseless neighbors are safe. And that's why we're trying to inform as many people as possible. But upcoming events, Saturday, November 11th, is going to be the People's Summit. And you can find more information about this on the Note to APEC Instagram. There should be a flyer there where there's a QR code and you sign up for it. And then they send you the information on the location and time. The reason why the location and time is not given unless you signed up for it is because, again, we live in a surveillance state. You gotta be careful, right?
Yeah, and what's gonna really happen during this event is multiple workshops highlighting really APEC's effect internationally, APEC's effect on workers, on women, and on the environment, and really highlighting that APEC means war. All of these economic agreements they're making is to strengthen themselves up as a militarized country, like to head into war. And that's why we actually see the US loves the Philippines, is to use the Philippines as a launching pad for war against China. So if you want to learn more about the international impact and even the local impact, come to it. It's again November 11th. If y'all are agitated about everything you're hearing, come protest with us on the 12th and throughout that whole week. Also, the more bodies, the safer we're able to be. And, the only people that will protect our community is not the police, but is us, the people. And we need to come out in numbers to show solidarity, not only with the Philippines, but it's 21 different countries. That's Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore. Let's show solidarity worldwide to all of these countries that are being affected by US imperialism, China imperialism. Let's really go out and show solidarity for our people. As Anakbayan CCSF, we're also a part of the No to APEC coalition. It is a coalition with different organizations, and different individuals can sign on also. And that's where you could really stay updated with all of the different actions we're going to have, but also all of the different trainings we're going to have for these upcoming actions, all of the different workshops we're going to be having. And if you want to join the No to APEC coalition to really dedicate yourself to this organizing and to this fight, or if you just want to stay on, join the coalition so you can stay updated on what's happening, it's going to be in the link tree in the No to APEC Instagram, and that's No2 APEC. Yes.
Definitely check that out. And again, we'll have it linked in the show notes. Thank you two so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Find more episodes of Sad Francisco, which is produced by Toshio Moronic and Caitlin Wood, at patreon.com/sadfrancisco. See you next time in Sad Francisco.